The story begins not at Thermopylae but decades, even centuries before, in a land of city-states gods and endless ambition. Greece was not one nation, but a collection of fiercely independent city-states, each with its own government army and way of life. Athens was the centre of culture and trade, known for its philosophers and artists. Sparta in the southern region of Laconia was a militaristic society, forged for war above all else. Thebes, Corinth, and countless other polities dotted the landscape, each suspicious of the other, yet united when faced with an existential threat. Far to the east, the Achaemenid Empire, ruled by the ambitious King Xerxes, stretched across vast lands, from the Nile River in Egypt to the Indus Valley in India. The Persian Empire was a machine of conquest, well-organised, well-equipped, and driven by the ambition to dominate all of the known world. Greek city-states, scattered and small, might have seemed like trifles, but to Xerxes their defiance demanded subjugation. Tensions between Greece and Persia had already escalated decades earlier. In 499 BCE, Ionian Greek cities on the coast of Asia Minor rebelled against Persian rule. Athens and Eretria sent ships to assist them. The rebellion was crushed, but Xerxes' eyes now turned westward. The burning of Sardis, the Persian capital of Asia Minor, left an indelible mark on his ambitions. Revenge was no longer a choice, it was a command of empire. By 480 BCE, Xerxes amassed an army of unparalleled size. Ancient sources claim hundreds of thousands, though modern estimates suggest a force of 50,000 or 150,000, a combination of cavalry, infantry, archers, and support personnel. The Persians were diverse, a mixture of Medes, Persians, Saka Indians, and Egyptians, all under the banner of Xerxes. Their numbers alone were terrifying. Their reputation for swift conquest and brutal reprisals preceded them. Tales of cities, destroyed populations, slaughtered, and enemies subjugated travelled westward, reaching the ears of Greek citizens and striking fear into their hearts. Meanwhile, the Greek city-states faced a challenge unlike any they had seen. They were deeply independent, often mistrustful of one another. Athens and Sparta had very different societies. Athens prized democracy, debate, and culture. Sparta revered obedience, discipline, and the art of war. Yet history demanded an alliance. If Greece were to survive, its fragmented states had to unite against the overwhelming Persian threat. Sparta, famed for its warriors, was chosen to lead the defence at a narrow mountain pass known as Thermopylae, the Hot Gates. This was not a random location. It was a natural choke point. To the east, the Aegean Sea created a narrow corridor. To the west, steep mountains funneled the Persian army into a confined space. Here the Greeks could hope to neutralise the numerical advantage of the Persians. The decision was strategic genius. In such a narrow pass, the might of the Persian cavalry could not be fully deployed. The phalanx of the Spartans, a wall of interlocking shields and bristling spears, could hold back waves of attackers. Each soldier's discipline and training amplified their effectiveness, allowing a small force to resist a much larger one. Yet the stakes were terrifying. Failure meant the fall of central Greece, including Athens, and perhaps the domination of the Persian Empire across the entire region. The Greek coalition was fragile. Sparta contributed its elite 300 soldiers, handpicked, trained since childhood, to endure pain and to fight without hesitation. These warriors were joined by several thousand allies from other city-states, including Thespians, Thebans, and Corinthians. Their total numbers, while respectable, were a fraction of Xerxes' army. The contrast was stark, few thousands of Greeks against a Persian horde that might have numbered in the hundreds of thousands. Preparation for battle was intense. Spartans drilled relentlessly, forming ranks of shield and spear, honing the phalanx into a deadly machine. They practiced the rhythm of advance and retreat, coordination of thrusts and blocks, ensuring that every soldier acted as one with his comrades. For them, discipline was survival. Courage alone was insufficient. In training, they imagined waves of attackers breaking upon their line spears, piercing through armour shields, rattling as arrows and javelins rained down. This imagination became rehearsal for the day that would come. The Persians, confident in their overwhelming numbers, marched slowly through Europe. Xerxes himself oversaw the campaign, towering over generals and soldiers alike. According to legend, he demanded that bridges be built over rivers, canals dug through isthmuses, and even that the Hellespont be whipped when storms destroyed his pontoon bridges. These acts, part propaganda, part madness, were meant to demonstrate Persian power not just to the Greeks, but to the entire world. The stage was now set, two civilizations each with its own ideals, fighting not only for survival, but for the soul of their culture. On one side, the disciplined few and fearless Greeks led by Sparta's finest. On the other, the vast, diverse and ruthless Persian army led by the legendary Xerxes, a king who would brook no failure. As the sun rose over the mountains of central Greece, the narrow pass of Thermopylae became a funnel for destiny. Here every rock, every ridge, every foot of ground would be contested. Here a handful of warriors would stand against a seemingly endless tide. The air was thick with tension, the smell of sweat and leather mingling with the scent of pine and dust. Every soldier knew the odds, yet every man understood his duty. The Greeks were about to face the mightiest army the world had ever seen. This was not merely a battle of men, but a battle of wills, of ideals, and of history itself. And in this crucible, the legend of the 300 Spartan warriors and the countless allies who stood beside them would be forged forever. Each spear thrust, each shield block, each life given would echo through time, telling a story of courage, strategy, and defiance against overwhelming odds. The Spartan machine training weapons and tactics. In Sparta, a boy was not simply a child. He was a soldier in training a future defender of the city-state. From the age of 7, Spartan boys were taken from their families and placed into the agoge, the state-run education and training system, designed to forge warriors from raw flesh and bone. This training was as brutal as it was disciplined. Hunger, cold, and pain were constant companions forging endurance. Weakness was punished, courage rewarded. Every lesson was about survival and dominance in battle. They were taught to march in formation, to hold the phalanx, and to wield the dory spear and Xiphos short sword with deadly efficiency. Shields were more than protection. They were extensions of the body and of the unit. A Spartan shield could cover not only the individual, but also the comrade to the left, forming a wall of bronze that became nearly impervious to arrows and spears in tight formation. Every thrust, every block, every step was synchronized. The phalanx was not merely a tactic. It was a living organism, each soldier a vital part of a larger whole. The training of a Spartan warrior was designed to make them fearless. Boys were encouraged to steal food to survive, yet they were punished if caught teaching cunning and stealth. Wrestling, running, javelin, throwing, and mock battles honed agility and strength. Pain was routine, fear was foreign. By the age of 20, a Spartan was no longer a boy. He was a finely tuned instrument of war. Discipline, obedience, and courage were ingrained deeper than muscle memory. By the time the Persian threat approached, Sparta had prepared its elite soldiers, the 300 Spartans selected to hold Thermopylae men, who were at the peak of physical conditioning, mental toughness, and battle readiness. These were not ordinary soldiers. Each man was tested, proven, and sworn to absolute loyalty to Sparta. They carried with them bronze helmets, greaves, and cuirasses, polished yet battle-worn, with shields large enough to cover their bodies and those beside them. Their primary weapon, the spear, could be used to thrust at enemies before they ever reached the shield wall. The short sword was reserved for the deadly chaos of close combat, yet Spartan training was only part of the story. The real power lay in their tactics and cohesion. The phalanx was a formidable formation. In rows 8 to 12, deep soldiers locked shields and braced spears, creating a nearly impenetrable line. Enemy attacks, no matter how numerous, were funneled into narrow spaces where numbers became meaningless. The tight spacing meant that even a single soldier could kill multiple attackers in the confined chaos of the front line, especially when the enemy had no room to maneuver. Spartans were also masters of terrain utilization. Thermopylae was chosen precisely because it was a narrow corridor bordered by mountains and the sea. In such a space, cavalry could not charge effectively, and the Persian numerical advantage was neutralized. The Greeks could block the pass, forcing waves of Persians to advance in tight ranks, where their mobility was restricted, and the disciplined thrusts of Spartan spears became lethal. Spartan strategy also included rotating units and controlled engagement. The front ranks absorbed the initial impact, while those behind stood ready to advance as lines weakened. Even a single soldier in this formation was multiplied by the discipline of the others. Every thrust and parry was supported by comrades. Coordination, rhythm, and timing were as important as individual skill. Psychology played a role as well. Spartan warriors were instilled with the belief that retreat was dishonor, and that death in battle was preferable to cowardice. The presence of king's officers and fellow soldiers created an unbreakable chain of responsibility. Fear existed, but it was channeled into precision and lethality. A Spartan did not fight for personal glory. He fought for the city, for the line beside him, for the survival of Hellenic civilization itself. The Spartan shield was a symbol of this philosophy. Losing it in battle was one of the greatest dishonours, yet wielding it in perfect formation meant both protection and empowerment. Soldiers trusted their shields as much as they trusted their comrades. Spear and shield became extensions of will, and in Thermopylae every soldier knew that a misstep could cost not just his life, but the lives of those next to him. Beyond Sparta itself, the army was reinforced by allies. Thespians, Thebans, and other city-states contributed soldiers, though their training and morale varied. The Spartans led, forming the tip of the spear, the first line to face the Persian advance. They drilled constantly, moved in perfect synchronicity, and carried the weight of an entire culture on their shoulders. Preparation extended beyond physical readiness. Spartan leaders studied intelligence reports, terrain maps, and enemy capabilities. They calculated how many soldiers could attack at once, the reach of enemy archers, the spacing required for phalanx efficiency. Even the wind, the sun, and the sea's edge were considered. Thermopylae's narrow pass amplified the advantage of the few over the many, but only if executed perfectly. As the Persians approached, the Spartan warriors were ready. Their bodies were honed to the edge of human potential, their minds trained to anticipate and react, their hearts bound by duty and courage. Each Spartan was capable of killing tens of enemy soldiers in concentrated engagements, particularly in the confined spaces of the pass. Their training discipline and tactics transformed the few into a force that could challenge an empire. Thermopylae would become the ultimate test of this preparation. Every spear, every shield, every movement would be measured against the might of Persia. And though the odds were overwhelming, the power of Spartan training and cohesion meant that these men were not simply soldiers. They were legends in the making, ready to etch their story into the annals of history. The journey and the first days of battle. The journey to Thermopylae was itself a test of endurance, courage, and resolve. The Spartan warriors, along with their allies from Thespia, Thebes, and Corinth, marched through rugged hills, dusty plains, and winding passes, each step bringing them closer to a confrontation that would decide the fate of Greece. Their supplies were limited, their numbers dwarfed by the vast Persian army approaching from the east. Every soldier knew the reality they were vastly outnumbered, yet retreat was not an option. As they arrived at the pass, the sheer scale of the Persian threat became apparent. Across the horizon, dust clouds signalled an army as far as the eye could see. Cavalry units gleamed in the morning sun, infantry carried spears and bows, archers ready to rain death from a distance. Xerxes himself was said to tower over his generals, a living embodiment of the Persian Empire's might. To the Greeks, the sight was terrifying, yet the Spartans' discipline held firm. Fear was acknowledged, but it was controlled, focused, and transformed into deadly precision. The narrow pass of Thermopylae, flanked by towering mountains, and the sea became the stage for an extraordinary defence. This was a natural choke point where the Persian army's overwhelming numbers could be neutralised. The Spartans deployed their phalanx in the centre of the pass, interlocking shields and bracing spears, while allied forces took positions on the flanks. Every soldier understood his role. The first line would absorb the initial impact, the second line would support, and all would act as one. The first day of battle arrived with a deafening roar. Persian infantry advanced their ranks, stretching as far as the eye could see. Arrows rained down upon the Greek line, yet the tightly held shields of the phalanx deflected most projectiles. The Spartans advanced methodically, each step measured, each thrust of the spear precise. A single soldier could plunge his spear into the chest of one opponent, then pivot to strike another before they could recover. The narrow pass ensured that enemy numbers counted for little. Even with discipline, the strain was immense. Men were struck by arrows, swords, and javelins. Blood soaked the earth, mingling with the dust, and the air was filled with the screams of the dying and wounded. Yet the Spartans moved as one, every thrust coordinated, every parry calculated. Their training turned fear into efficiency. Their courage became a multiplying force. According to historical estimates, a single Spartan soldier in these tight conditions could have killed dozens of Persian soldiers during the fierce engagements of the first day. The Persians, frustrated by their inability to break the line, attempted repeated charges. Cavalry could not effectively engage in the narrow pass, and infantry was funneled into deadly contact with the Spartan phalanx. The disciplined thrusts of the dory combined with the immovable shield wall repelled wave after wave. In the chaos, individual heroism shone. Some Spartans engaged multiple enemies at once, striking, swiftly moving with lethal grace. Each death inflicted on the Persians was a signal that numbers alone could not guarantee victory. By the second day, exhaustion began to weigh heavily. The sun blazed down, soldiers' muscles ached, and yet there was no room for hesitation. Reinforcements from allied Greek city-states had arrived, yet the Spartan core remained the anchor of the defence. Even the smallest error could lead to collapse. Arrows and javelins continued to fly, men fell, and yet the line held a testament to discipline and the unbreakable cohesion of the Spartan phalanx. During these first 2 days, the psychological toll was immense. Every soldier faced the tension of confronting a vast, relentless enemy. Yet Spartan resolve remained unshaken. They moved in precise rhythm shields, brushing shields, spears stabbing forward in unison. The battlefield became almost hypnotic waves of Persians pressing forward, only to be met by the unyielding line of bronze and muscle. Even amidst chaos, the Spartans were a force of nature, their training and discipline magnifying their lethality far beyond what their numbers would suggest. Observers later marvelled at the effectiveness of the defence. Though outnumbered by hundreds to one, the Spartans and their allies inflicted enormous casualties on the Persian forces. Estimates suggest that the concentrated fighting in the pass allowed each Spartan to kill tens of enemy soldiers. The narrow terrain amplified their effectiveness, turning their skills into a force multiplier. Every fallen enemy was a victory for Greek strategy and Spartan bravery. Yet there were moments of fear, moments of doubt. Night fell and the sounds of the wounded and dying echoed across the pass. The soldiers huddled in tight formations, sharing the burdens of those next to them. Leaders moved among the ranks, offering guidance, reassurance, and commands. Spartan philosophy demanded courage, but also emphasized trust in comrades and cohesion. Each man's survival depended on the man to his left and right. The psychological bond formed in these hours would prove as crucial as the steel they wielded. On the third day, intelligence brought terrible news. A local traitor Ephialtes had revealed a hidden mountain path to the Persians, threatening to outflank the Greek line. The Spartans now faced the grim reality the pass could no longer contain the enemy entirely, yet their discipline did not falter. Leonidas, the Spartan king, prepared for the final stand. The bulk of the allied Greek forces was ordered to retreat, but the Spartans and a small contingent of Thespians remained determined to hold the line to the death. Even as the sun rose on the final day, the narrow pass became a scene of unparalleled heroism and carnage. The Persians surged through the mountain path and pressed against the Greek defenders. Each Spartan fought with every ounce of skill and strength, moving like a single organism, striking dozens of enemies in sequence, holding the pass against overwhelming odds. The battlefield was transformed into a testament to courage, discipline, and the terrifying cost of war. The story of these first days is not only about strategy and skill, but about the extraordinary capacity of humans to endure and fight against overwhelming odds. Thermopylae became a crucible in which Spartan training, courage, and cohesion were tested to their limits. Every spear thrust, every shield block, every fallen enemy illustrated how a small, disciplined force could defy an empire, at least for a time. The last stand betrayal and the fall of the 300. The sun rose on the third day at Thermopylae, casting golden light across the narrow mountain pass. The Greek defenders, exhausted from 2 days of relentless combat, knew that this day would be different. The Persian tide, frustrated by repeated failure, now had an advantage no Spartan could deny a hidden path revealed by Ephialtes, a traitor who had betrayed the Greeks for gold. Xerxes' forces now threatened to encircle the defenders, rendering the phalanx's advantages less effective. King Leonidas, fully aware of the peril, made a fateful decision. He ordered most of the Greek allies to retreat to safety, preserving the future of Greece. Only the 300 Spartans, along with a small contingent of Thespians and Thebans, would remain. They knew the odds completely outnumbered, facing tens of thousands, but the Spartan code demanded courage, honor, and the ultimate sacrifice. To retreat would be dishonor, to stand was to become legend. The Spartans formed their final phalanx shields, interlocked spears bristling forward. The narrow pass amplified their lethality, forcing Persian attackers into a death trap. Every step forward by the enemy met with the precision of Spartan training, every thrust calculated, every shield brace perfectly timed. Each Spartan was capable of killing dozens of enemy soldiers in the confined space. Estimates suggest that in this final day, some warriors may have slain 50 or more Persians before falling themselves. The mountain pass echoed with the clash of bronze and steel, the screams of the dying, and the relentless rhythm of battle. Leonidas moved among his men, his presence a beacon of courage. He fought at the front, a living wall of bronze and muscle, each movement calculated to inspire those around him. Persian arrows rained down, but the Spartans held their line. Enemy soldiers fell in droves, driven back by spears, swords, and sheer discipline. Even amidst the chaos, Spartan coordination remained near perfect. Their training and cohesion allowed them to hold the pass far longer than anyone could have expected. As the day wore on, the tide of Persian forces became overwhelming. From the mountain path revealed by Ephialtes, enemy units began to descend upon the Greek defenders' flank. Leonidas and his men adjusted, forming new lines, fighting in tight formations to block every possible breakthrough. Every Spartan engaged multiple enemies at once, thrusting spears, swinging swords, parrying blows, striking down dozens of foes in a deadly dance. The pass became a killing ground, a crucible, where skill, discipline, and courage multiplied their lethality. The Spartans fought not just with weapons, but with sheer will. They bore the weight of their culture, their city-state, and the lives of future Greeks on their shoulders. Death was certain, yet hesitation was impossible. Each soldier knew that his actions could delay the Persian advance, giving retreating allies time to survive, regroup, and eventually defend Greece. Every fallen Persian was a testament to Spartan skill, courage, and unyielding spirit. Leonidas himself fell in the midst of the chaos surrounded by the enemy. According to legend, he was struck down only after fighting ferociously, his spear killing dozens around him. His death did not break the line. The remaining Spartans continued to fight, inspired by their king's example. One by one, the 300 Spartan warriors and their loyal allies gave their lives, each strike a calculated act of defiance, each death a symbol of courage. Their bodies formed the last barrier, a human wall that slowed an empire. The Persian army poured through the pass, but the price had been staggering. Tens of thousands of Persian soldiers had been killed or wounded in the confined space. The efficiency of Spartan training and the use of terrain meant that each Spartan was effectively able to kill dozens, even scores of enemy combatants. The few hundred warriors had achieved what might have seemed impossible, delaying an empire for days, with profound strategic and psychological consequences. Even after their deaths, the story of the 300 Spartans spread. Their sacrifice became a symbol of courage against impossible odds. The Greek city-states, inspired by this example, would continue the fight, eventually defeating the Persians at Salamis and Plataea. Thermopylae had not stopped Xerxes entirely, but it had delayed him, inflicted staggering losses, and most importantly ignited a legend that would endure for millennia. The mountains themselves seemed to echo with the memory of the battle. Dust and blood mingled in the pass arrows and spears embedded in the rocky soil. Spartan shields, once bristling in perfect formation, lay shattered. The names of the fallen, the valor displayed, and the overwhelming odds they overcame became immortal. Each Spartan's individual heroism, killing dozens of enemy soldiers, holding the line against waves of attackers, refusing to yield, even when surrounded, resonated through history as the ultimate act of courage. Thermopylae became more than a battlefield. It became a lesson in strategy, discipline, and human endurance. One soldier, acting with precision, courage, and unity with his comrades, could defy hundreds, if not thousands, of foes. The battlefield was not just a place of death. It was a stage on which the ideals of honor, sacrifice, and mastery of skill were demonstrated in the most extreme circumstances. And so the last stand of the 300 Spartans at Thermopylae remains a story for all time, a tale of courage against overwhelming odds of discipline, amplified by unity, and of the terrifying yet awe-inspiring reality that a few well-trained and fearless individuals can shape the course of history. The mountains, winds, and rocks still remember the clash, the spears, the shields, and the unwavering hearts of the Spartans who fought to the last breath. The aftermath, legacy, and strategic significance. The narrow pass of Thermopylae, once a stage of ferocious combat, now lay silent save for the groans of the wounded and the whispers of the wind. The battle was over, and the 300 Spartans, along with their loyal allies, had perished their bodies, marking the pass with the ultimate price of courage. Yet in death they had achieved something far greater than survival. They had etched a legacy that would echo across centuries. Strategically, the sacrifice of the Spartans had not stopped Xerxes. The Persian king advanced confident that the might of his empire would crush Greece. Yet the delay imposed by Thermopylae proved invaluable. The days gained allowed the Greek city-states to mobilize defences, reinforce Athens, and coordinate naval strategies that would ultimately determine the course of the Persian invasion. Thermopylae had bought time a few precious days that would tip the scales in the larger conflict. The battle also inflicted significant casualties on the Persian army. The confined pass had neutralized their numerical advantage, forcing them into deadly frontal assaults. Estimates suggest that the disciplined Spartans, each killing dozens of enemy soldiers, caused thousands of Persian casualties in those 3 days. This was not merely a statistic, it was a psychological blow to Xerxes' forces. The invincibility of the Persian army assumed by many across the empire had been challenged and proven vulnerable, at least in certain conditions. The legend of Thermopylae quickly spread throughout Greece. Stories of the 300 Spartans and their allies inspired city-states to set aside rivalries and cooperate against the common threat. The valour of the Spartans became a symbol, a standard by which all other acts of courage were measured. It was a reminder that discipline, skill and unity could allow the few to challenge the many, and that individual heroism, when multiplied by cohesion, could alter the fate of nations. Culturally, the battle became mythologized. Poets, historians, and later philosophers recounted the deeds of Leonidas and his warriors with reverence. Every spear thrust, every shield brace, every life given in defense of the pass was celebrated as a testament to human courage and dedication to ideals larger than oneself. Thermopylae became a lens through which the Greeks and later generations examined the nature of heroism, sacrifice, and leadership. The strategic lessons of Thermopylae were equally profound. Military theorists noted the importance of terrain force multiplication and disciplined formations. The Spartan phalanx, perfectly executed, transformed a few hundred men into a force capable of holding back tens of thousands. The battle illustrated that the quality of soldiers and command could outweigh sheer quantity, particularly when geography was leveraged intelligently. Commanders across history would study Thermopylae as an example of maximizing limited resources against overwhelming odds. Psychologically, the story resonated far beyond the battlefield. Greek morale, initially shaken by the Persian advance, found renewed strength in the example of the 300 Spartans. Citizens, soldiers, and leaders were reminded that valor and dedication could inspire nations to resist even the most formidable foes. The narrative of Thermopylae became a unifying myth, a story to galvanize the Greeks as they prepared for subsequent engagements, including the decisive naval battle at Salamis and the final confrontations at Plataea. The Persian perspective also reflected the battle's significance. Xerxes had expected a swift victory but encountered resistance that cost him dearly. Though he eventually advanced through the pass, he had underestimated the efficiency of disciplined soldiers and the impact of terrain on warfare. Thermopylae forced him to confront the limits of his army and consider the psychological dimensions of command. The empire's overwhelming numbers were not invincible. Even a few hundred men properly trained and strategically positioned could impose extraordinary losses. Thermopylae also left an enduring lesson in the nature of leadership and sacrifice. Leonidas, by choosing to remain with his men, demonstrated that a leader's duty extends beyond issuing commands. By fighting alongside them, he embodied the very ideals he expected his soldiers to uphold. His death and the deaths of all 300 Spartans underscored the principle that leadership often entails personal risk and ultimate accountability. Future generations would study this principle, recognizing that true authority is inseparable from courage and example. Beyond strategy and leadership, Thermopylae became a story about the human spirit under extreme adversity. Each Spartan soldier, aware that his life would end that day, fought with precision, intelligence, and courage. Estimates suggest that each man killed dozens of Persian soldiers in concentrated engagements, magnifying the impact of the small force. Their sacrifice highlighted how training discipline and unwavering focus can allow ordinary humans to perform extraordinary feats, even against insurmountable odds. Historically, the battle marked a turning point in the Greco-Persian Wars. While Persia temporarily advanced into central Greece, the time bought by Thermopylae allowed the Greeks to reorganize, prepare Athens for evacuation, and secure key naval positions. Without this delay, the coordinated Greek resistance that ultimately repelled the Persian invasion may have failed. Thermopylae, therefore, was not a defeat in the traditional sense, it was a tactical victory, and a strategic masterstroke achieved through sacrifice, courage, and ingenuity. The legacy of Thermopylae transcends the battlefield. It has inspired countless works of literature, art, and philosophy. From Herodotus's historical accounts to modern retellings, the story illustrates timeless lessons: courage in the face of overwhelming odds, the power of unity and discipline, and the enduring impact of individual heroism on history. Each Spartan, by holding the line and killing dozens of enemy soldiers, became a symbol of what humanity can achieve when determination, skill, and purpose converge. Even today, the mountains of central Greece bear silent witness to the struggle. Thermopylae is remembered not only as a military engagement, but as a testament to the enduring human qualities of courage, sacrifice, and resilience. The story of the 300 Spartans and their allies reminds us that one person, or a small disciplined group, can defy seemingly impossible odds, influence the course of events, and leave a legacy that echoes through history. In the final analysis, Thermopylae was more than a battle. It was a convergence of skill, strategy, terrain, and spirit. It was a moment when human potential was amplified by discipline and unity. The deaths of the Spartans were not in vain. They reshaped history, inspired nations, and gave the world a story of extraordinary courage. For every Spartan who fell, countless Persian soldiers were slain, and the balance of power in Greece was forever altered.